Joining me in studio, Lubbock Mayor Glen Robertson, candidate for Congress, District 19. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you. Good morning, Chad.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for stopping in today. How's the campaigning going?
It's going well. Spending a lot of time on the road. There's 29 counties in this district, and have a goal of trying to be in the 29th county. We're well on our way. We've made 21 so far, and I hope by the end of this week we will have made campaign stops in all 29.
This is, you and I were talking about during the break that early voting, it's in less than a month now.
Yes.
Before Christmas, there were a lot of people concentrating on Christmas and also the presidential race. Now, I think everyone's starting to look up and go, oh, wait a minute. We're about to have to go and vote on candidates in a primary. And for you guys running in District 19, you have to meet a lot of people.
We do, and it's a sprint now. And it's going to be an interesting year for elections in West Texas. If you look at the presidential primary, you look at the primary for this congressional race, and then the state seats, and then the municipal seats. It's going to be a crazy year out here.
Yeah, absolutely. What are the issues that are driving this race or driving the voters? Maybe frustration, concerns. What are those issues?
I think the three top national issues, we've got to talk about national security, which, of course, includes border control, controlling the border, and immigration issues. We've got to talk about health care and the effect that Obamacare has had, especially on rural health in West Texas. And then we've got to talk about the $19 trillion in debt, the $100 trillion in unfunded liabilities, and that issue is going to entail looking very hard at the entitlement programs, the way the IRS is structured, the way our tax is structured. On a more district level, we've got to talk about ag, energy, and health care. We are in a true crisis mode in all three of those in West Texas right now.
Do you think that the district issues, and we could talk about, I guess, subsidies here, because I think at the Faith and Family Forum, we got into an interesting conversation that I sort of wish we could have gone longer on the issue, but that was subsidies. And we asked the question, is there any room for subsidies in the United States and in this district? Because there are some voters out there who they'll say, well, no, we don't like subsidies, we don't like entitlements, we don't like government handouts. But at the same time, there's a pretty big industry out in this district that they do take subsidies.
There's several industries in our district that take subsidies. Wind energy has been subsidized since its inception. Mm-hmm. Ag has been subsidized. I think what we've got to do is come up with a 10 to 12-year plan to wean ourselves off of those subsidies. And to do that, especially in the ag industry, we've got to solve the problems we've got with trade policy. We've got to get out of the World Trade Organization. We've got to get our growers, our producers, on a level playing field. We're competing against corrupt foreign governments that are subsidizing their growers, especially cotton growers, from anywhere from 90 cents a pound to $1.40 a pound. Our growers are lucky if they can get cotton in the ag program right now for 58.5 cents. So I think the solution is to try to level the playing field, and that's going to take a while. It's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to take a lot of work. But we've got to have a goal of realizing that our producers, if we can put them on a level playing field with the rest of the world, our ingenuity, our work ethic, we will outproduce them, and we will once again become the king of cotton and all other ag.
When you go and you speak to some of the more rural communities out there and you're out there talking to the ag producers and this issue comes up, one of your opponents in the race, I think more than one of your opponents in the race, they embrace subsidies a little bit more, I think, than what you do. You're talking about weaning off of subsidies. How does this argument play for the farmers and the ag producers out there of saying, hey, we understand you're in a bind right now. We don't want to take everything and pull the rug out from under you, but eventually we have to move in this direction. How does that argument play in your mind?
It's playing real well. The growers I've talked to don't really want subsidies. They realize they have to have them right now to be able to stay afloat. They would prefer to have a level playing field. Especially with cotton. Now, cotton gets 0 subsidies. Mm-hmm. All they've got is a very weak safety net. I think we're going to have to continue a safety net program for all of ag. Now, it's not just cotton. We've got frozen box beef being imported from Argentina, Brazil, other countries that's killing our beef producers. We've got to fix those policies. And I really think that the responsible growers that I've talked to, that's what they want. They want a fair, level playing field. They want to be able to compete. And they don't want to compete against their own dollars. We have to understand that China, India, Brazil, what technology we haven't given them, they've stolen the rest. And so those are that's the core problem that we have to address.
So if elected, how do you, in a body with so many individuals, so many different ideas on this issue, how do you impact and influence that change?
A freshman congressman has zero seniority, and so I think his first job is to get up there and develop a reputation of the hardest working man on Capitol Hill. You've got to be the first one in the office in the morning, the last one to go home at night. The other thing you have to do is you have to earn the respect of your fellow legislators, and you do that by never lying to them. You don't ever blindside them, but you stand firm on your principles and your values. And you let them know that, there's some issues that I have to defend my constituents in District 19 on. You've got to start building those coalitions and working with those other congressmen up there to where when you can start trying to affect this change, lay out policies that will wean us off of entitlements, but with very good in-game strategies, you can start gathering support for that.
Visiting with Glen Robertson, you mentioned the national debt, and I think this is something that has not gained as much attention in the national debates as it probably should be.
I agree.
But we've seen some articles published lately about the growing national debt, and I believe the CBO forecasted, maybe it was yesterday or late last week, that within the next 10 years, the picture's even worse than it is right now. What type of action do we need to take, in your opinion?
First thing we've got to do is start shrinking the size of federal government. I think we need to pass legislation with a employment cap of where we're currently at, with a 10-year plan of reducing the number of federal employees by at least a third. We've got to get out of the education business as a federal government. We need to reduce the scope and the size of the IRS by bringing in a more fair or flat tax plan. We've got to start working on these entitlements. We can't continue to incentivize people to not work. And so much of our federal money is spent on these entitlement programs, and the fact that our federal government's now the largest employer in the United States. We also have to remember that as the largest employer, the federal government produces nothing. That's where we've got to start. We've got to start cutting the spending. We've got to we need a balanced budget, legislation passed, and it can't be with a lot of exclusions. We have to balance the budget, and we cannot continue. And we keep talking about $19 trillion in debt. What we don't talk about is $100 trillion in unfunded liabilities. We've got over $120 trillion in liabilities out there that we don't have the capital to take care of.
Visiting with Lubbock Mayor Glen Robertson, running for District 19 for Congress. If you have any questions, feel free to email those in, Chad at KFYO.com. When we come back from the break, we have a lot more to get into, including domestic and even some international issues that Congress will probably be weighing in on. And, oh, yes, we will continue to take a look at the economy with the Dow so far plummeting 400 points today. What impact will that have going into the future? Chad Hasty Show, KFYO. Just real quick, some breaking news that we will talk about much more later on in the show. Lubbock City Councilman Victor Hernandez has filed paperwork to run for mayor. We'll put that aside, let you digest that. In studio with us right now, the current mayor of Lubbock, seeking the position for Congress in Texas 19, Glen Robertson. And let's take a look again and stay on the issue of the economy.
Okay.
I mentioned the Dow right now.
Right.
And you've seen the stock market. A lot of people were worried about what we're seeing in stock prices. Obviously, those who are working on the oil fields, they're very concerned with what's going on. I think it's tough to make the argument that everything's fine and dandy with the U.S. economy. how do we fix what's going on in this economy in your mind?
Well, we've got one of the first things we have to do is audit the Fed. Federal Reserve has been manipulating interest rates, artificially holding them low for the last 3 or 4 years, and manipulating the currency exchanges, the value of the U.S. dollar. Here again, trade policies have to come back into it. What I'm concerned about District 19, we have never went through an extended period of time in West Texas where we had low oil prices and low commodity prices and rising interest rate environment. And any time you get to where your commodity prices are dropping and your interest rates are rising, you're going to have a financial crisis. You're going to have a credit crisis. Our growers are headed into a credit crisis right now for this next season. Oil's already there. I've read reports from Bloomberg and other agencies that are anticipating anywhere from a third to half of our oil producers to file bankruptcy within the next 6 months. So I'm very concerned about the economy. I'm very concerned about especially our fixed income folks. Now that we've got the market crashing, which we always have this type of uncertainty before federal elections. Mm-hmm. The market hates uncertainty. And if you look at what's going on both the presidential primaries, we've got a lot of uncertainty right now, and the market is reacting. I think they're also reacting to the situation that we've done with Iran, the gift that our president has given Iran, and the fact that we know that Iran's going to start pumping and selling more oil again. We've got to address these issues at the Federal Reserve level. We've got to address these issues in foreign trade policies.
What is your plan when you get to Congress, if elected? It's been written by Jonah Goldberg. I thought he had an excellent piece out recently. Said that Congress has done a great job at expressing outrage. Wagging their fingers and saying this is terrible, but they've done a terrible job at actually legislating.
Yes. And
taking power back. The executive branch way out of control, in his opinion, and I think in a lot of others' opinions. How do you, and what is your plan to start taking that power back and bringing that more to Congress?
Well, you have to go up there. Number one, we've got to start running Congress like a business again. And it's not just the executive branch that's been overreaching. Congress, about 30 to 40 years ago, created a fourth branch of government, administrative agencies, and they ceded their right to legislate. They're letting these agencies, EPA, OSHA, IRS, they're letting them not only pass legislation, they're letting them execute it and adjudicate it. We've got to start gutting those administrative agencies. Congress has to start doing its job, has to start making the tough decisions. We can't have another omnibus bill where you throw 12 appropriation bills into one bill at the last moment where nobody's had any time to study the bill. Mm-hmm. Congress has got to start doing its job again, and that's working up through the system, getting bills worked through committee, going through the reconciliation process, not packaging these bills last minute, surprising not only the legislators but the constituents. So we got to get back to rules of order and proper conducting of business in Congress.
Some of what we're talking about today and what you've mentioned, it almost seems you would have to have a wholesale change of Congress, just about. You would have to readjust the attitude of many of the elected officials in Congress. So let's say you're in Congress and change isn't going to happen quickly as far as changing those attitudes. If we have another spending bill or another omnibus bill that comes in and it does what you just mentioned, spends way too much money, is overreaching, when do you decide I'm going to vote for it? I'm not going to vote for it, even if it could impact this area and maybe in a bad way?
The last omnibus bill passed in December was perfect example. We did get some benefit out in West Texas. We got the $3 billion back in crop insurance. Mm-hmm. I still would have voted against that bill. It was an absolute horrible omnibus spending bill, about $1.1 trillion in spending, handed the president another blank check, increased the level of funding and the amount of illegal immigration, and not only that, but it helped with bringing more immigrants from Syria and other countries that we know are intended. Their sole intention is to kill and maim and hurt as many non-Muslims as they can. So I think we've got to get our priorities right. We've got to get back to doing business the correct way in Congress. And you've got to be willing to take a stand. You've got to be willing to put a gap funding bill on the president's desk that says, you know what? It's your choice whether or not you're going to shut the country down, but we're not going to vote for this continued overreach and this continued overspending.
If the next president comes to you and says, okay, let's deal with immigration, I want the Robertson plan on how to deal with illegal immigration.
It's really pretty simple. The first step you have to do is secure the border. You can't fix the problem as they're continuing to pour in illegally. So we've got to secure the border.
How do you do that?
It's strategic fencing. A wall across the entire south border will not do it. It's going to be strategic fencing, more border patrol, using all the technology that we've got, drones, thermal imaging, cameras. We've got the methods to detect people entering this country. Second thing we've got to do is we've got to enforce the laws that are already on the books, the HB1 visa laws, the laws that when people are getting here on student or work visas, they're expired and we don't check back up on them. The other thing we've got to do is we've got to quit incentivizing. We're the magnet. We have created programs to where if you're from Guatemala, anywhere in Central America, you come to the United States illegally without a job. You have a better way of life than you had in your own country with a job because we're taking care of them. We're giving their kids subsidized education. We're giving them subsidized health care. We've got to stop that. We've got to stop the incentivizing. The other thing we've got to do for the 12 to 15 million illegals that are still here, we've got to incentivize them to leave on their own. And you do that by cutting out these benefits that they are receiving, that they're not due, they're not entitled because they're not United States citizens.
What about the folks who say, I'm not going to leave? You can cut out whatever you want to cut out, but I'm not going to leave. And is it feasible, or is it even part of a plan that should be looked at to, as some presidential candidates want to do, round up those who are here illegally and send them back?
I think the first step is, like I said before, to incentivize them to leave on their own accord. Second thing is, if they're here illegally, they violate any U.S. or state or city laws while they're here, they have to immediately be deported. The ones that are left, we have a federal registry program that was started in 1902. It worked very well. We haven't used it in years and years and years. We've got to come up with some sort of worker program. You look in our district, the amount of illegal immigrants that we have working in our cotton gins and in ag. We need to come up with plans that, here again, they have no rights as a U.S. citizen, but we've got worker programs and a path that they could get to citizenship, but not ahead of anybody that's doing it the proper way.
Real quick, tell people where they can find you online.
GlenForCongress.com.
All right, we'll have you back in studio before early voting starts.
Sounds great. Thanks, Chad.
Thank you.